The phone slipped from my trembling hands and clattered onto the hardwood floor. I stood frozen in the doorway of our bedroom, my heart hammering against my ribs like a caged bird desperate to escape. Brandon's voice still echoed in my mind, each word cutting deeper than the last. She's like a free servant, man. I mean, what else is she gonna do? Leave me? She's too guilty for that. 5 years of this routine and she still brings me breakfast in bed like some kind of robot. It's actually pretty convenient when you think about it. The cruel laughter that followed made my stomach turn. This was the man I had devoted 5 years of my life to. The man I had given up my career for, my dreams, my very identity. I had become nothing more than a caregiver, a shadow of who I used to be, and he saw me as nothing more than free labor. I pressed my back against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. Through the crack in the door, I could see Brandon in his wheelchair, still talking to whoever was on the other end of that call. His profile showed no hint of the man I had married 7 years ago. The accident had changed his body, but I was just now realizing how much it had changed his heart. Olivia doesn't even complain anymore, he continued, his voice carrying that same dismissive tone. She just does whatever needs doing. Cooking, cleaning, helping me shower, managing my medications. And she does it all for free. Best deal I ever made was marrying her before the accident. My legs felt weak. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor, my scrubs wrinkled around me. The same scrubs I had stopped wearing to work because I had quit my job as a registered nurse to care for him full-time. The same scrubs that now hung in my closet like ghosts of my former life. The conversation continued, but I couldn't hear it over the rushing sound in my ears. Blood was pounding through my head and I felt like I might throw up. 5 years. 5 years of waking up at dawn to help him with his morning routine. 5 years of lifting, adjusting, medicating, feeding. 5 years of putting his needs before my own, of sleeping in short bursts because he needed help turning in the night. I thought about the job offer I had turned down last month. A position at the children's hospital that would have been perfect for me. I had told the hiring manager that I couldn't commit to full-time work because of my husband's condition. The disappointment in her voice had haunted me for weeks, but I had convinced myself I was doing the right thing. I was being loyal. I was being a good wife. But Brandon didn't see loyalty. He saw convenience. He saw a free servant. I pulled myself up from the floor and walked quietly to the bathroom, closing the door behind me. In the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The woman staring back at me had hollow eyes and gray streaks in her black hair that hadn't been there before the accident. My once bright smile had been replaced by a tired expression that seemed permanently etched into my features. When had I stopped being Olivia and become just the caregiver? When had I stopped being a person and become just a service provider in my own home? I splashed cold water on my face and tried to think clearly. The shock was wearing off, and in its place came something I hadn't felt in years: anger. Not the quick flash of irritation I sometimes felt when Brandon was particularly demanding, but a deep, burning anger that started in my chest and spread through my entire body. I had sacrificed everything for him. My career, my friendships, my hobbies, my dreams. I had isolated myself from my family because caring for Brandon took all my time and energy. I had gained weight from stress eating and lost sleep from worry. I had become a stranger to myself, all because I believed I was doing something noble and necessary. But noble wives don't get called free servants. They don't get laughed about behind their backs. They don't get treated like unpaid help by the person they love most in the world. I walked back to the bedroom, my steps measured and quiet. Brandon had finished his call and was scrolling through his phone, completely unaware that his world was about to change. He looked up when I entered, his expression neutral. "Hey babe, can you make me a sandwich? I'm getting hungry." The casual request, delivered in the same tone he might use to ask a waitress for extra napkins, was the final straw. I stared at him for a long moment, seeing him clearly for the first time in years. This wasn't the man I had married. That man had been kind, grateful, loving. This man was entitled, dismissive, and cruel. "Make your own sandwich," I said quietly. Brandon's eyebrows shot up. "What?" I said, "Make your own sandwich. You have full use of your arms and hands. You can wheel yourself to the kitchen and make your own food." He stared at me like I had grown a second head. "Olivia, what's wrong with you? You always make my meals." "Not anymore." I turned and walked toward the closet, my heart racing but my mind strangely clear. I pulled out a suitcase and set it on the bed. Brandon watched me with growing alarm as I began folding clothes and placing them inside. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice rising slightly. "I'm leaving." "You can't leave. You're my wife. You're supposed to take care of me." I stopped folding and looked at him directly. I'm supposed to be your partner, not your servant. There's a difference. I never said you were my servant. The lie came so easily to him that I almost laughed. Yes, you did. About 10 minutes ago on the phone. You called me a free servant and laughed about how convenient it was that I was too guilty to leave you. The color drained from his face. You heard that? Every word. He was quiet for a moment, then his expression hardened. You're being dramatic. You know I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it then? It was guy talk. You know how men are when they're talking to their friends. I continued packing, my movements efficient and deliberate. No, Brandon. I know how you are. And I'm done with it. The reality of what was happening seemed to hit him all at once. You can't leave me. I need you. Who's going to take care of me? You'll figure it out. The same way millions of other people with disabilities figure it out. You'll hire help, or you'll ask your family, or you'll learn to do more things yourself. But you won't use me as your personal servant anymore. I don't have money for professional care. You have disability payments. You have insurance. You have savings. You have options that don't involve treating your wife like unpaid help. Brandon's voice cracked slightly. I'm sorry. I didn't mean those things I said. I was just being stupid. Please don't leave me. I paused in my packing and looked at him again. For a moment, I saw a flash of the man I had married. The vulnerability in his eyes was real, and part of me wanted to comfort him the way I had done 1,000 times before. But then I remembered the laughter in his voice when he called me a free servant, and the moment passed. I don't believe you, I said simply. If you were sorry, you would have been treating me better all along. You wouldn't have needed to hear me walking away to suddenly realize what you've lost. But I do realize it now. I realize how much you mean to me. You realize how much my services mean to you. There's a difference. I closed the suitcase and set it on the floor. In the bathroom, I gathered my toiletries and medications. Everything I was taking fit into 2 bags, which said something about how small my life had become. Where are you going? Brandon asked as I headed for the door. That's not your concern anymore. You're my wife. Of course it's my concern. I stopped in the doorway and turned back one last time. I stopped being your wife the moment you started seeing me as hired help. I'm done being your free servant, Brandon. Find someone else to do the job. The last thing I heard as I walked down the hallway was his voice calling my name, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. If I looked back, I might lose my nerve, and I couldn't afford to lose my nerve. Not now. Not when I was finally choosing myself for the first time in 5 years. I loaded my bags into my car and sat in the driver's seat for a moment, my hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. I had no idea where I was going or what I was going to do, but for the first time in years I felt like I could breathe. I started the engine and pulled out of the driveway, leaving behind the house that had become my prison and the man who had become my captor. I didn't look back. The hotel room was nothing special. Beige walls, generic artwork, and a bed that was too soft. But it was mine, and that made it beautiful. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone, which had been buzzing with calls and texts from Brandon for the past 3 hours. I had stopped answering after the first dozen attempts. The messages followed a predictable pattern. First came anger. You can't just leave me like this. This is abandonment. Then bargaining. If you come back, we can talk about getting you more help around the house. Then desperation. Please, Olivia. I'm sorry. I need you. But nowhere in his messages did I see the words I was looking for. He never said he loved me. He never said he valued me as a person. He only talked about needing me, which was exactly the problem. I turned off the phone and walked to the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me was a stranger, but maybe that was okay. Maybe it was time to get reacquainted with myself. I had met Brandon 8 years ago at a hospital charity event. I was 26, fresh out of nursing school, and full of dreams about making a difference in the world. He was 28, a construction supervisor with calloused hands and an easy smile. He had been volunteering at the event, helping set up tables and chairs, and we had started talking while arranging centerpieces. You're really good at this, he had said, watching me create perfect flower arrangements. I wanted to be a florist when I was little, I had replied, laughing. Before I decided to save lives instead. Why not both? Save lives during the day, arrange flowers at night. It had been such a simple suggestion, but it had shown me that he saw possibilities where I saw limitations. That night, he had asked for my number and I had given it to him without hesitation. Our courtship had been sweet and traditional. He brought me flowers every Friday, called when he said he would, and treated me like I was precious. When he proposed after 2 years of dating, I had said yes without thinking twice. The early years of our marriage had been happy. We had bought a small house with a white picket fence, talked about having children, and supported each other's dreams. I had been working toward my bachelor's degree in nursing, and he had been saving money to start his own construction company. Then came the accident. Brandon had been working on a high-rise project downtown when the scaffolding collapsed. 3 men were injured, but Brandon got the worst of it. The doctors said he was lucky to be alive, but the spinal cord damage left him paralyzed from the waist down. The first year after the accident was a blur of hospitals, rehabilitation centers, and medical appointments. I had taken leave from work to be with him, using up all my vacation time and sick days. When those ran out, I had requested a leave of absence, then eventually resigned when it became clear that Brandon needed more care than I could provide while working full-time. I had told myself it was temporary. Once Brandon adjusted to his new reality, I would go back to work. But temporary had stretched into 5 years, and Brandon had never adjusted. Instead, he had become increasingly dependent on me, not just for physical care but for everything. I had become his nurse, his housekeeper, his cook, his secretary, his social coordinator, and his emotional support system. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped being his wife and become his employee. An employee who worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with no pay, no benefits, and no days off. I had tried to talk to him about it several times over the years. I had suggested hiring a part-time aide so I could return to work part-time. I had asked about getting more help with household tasks. I had even suggested couples counseling to help us navigate our new reality. But Brandon had always had an excuse. We couldn't afford professional help. He was more comfortable with me taking care of him than with strangers. He needed me too much to share my time with a job. He had made me feel selfish for wanting anything beyond serving his needs. Now I realized that his excuses had been manipulation. He had kept me isolated and dependent because it served his purposes. He had trained me to put his needs first in all things, and I had been so focused on being a good wife that I had forgotten to be a whole person. The truth was, I had been enabling him. By doing everything for him, I had prevented him from learning to do things for himself. By making his life so comfortable, I had removed his motivation to grow and adapt. By sacrificing my own needs, I had taught him that my needs didn't matter. But I mattered. I was worth more than being someone's unpaid servant. I deserved to be loved, not just needed. I deserved to be valued, not just useful. I pulled out my laptop and began searching for nursing jobs. My license was still current, and I had kept up with my continuing education requirements, hoping that someday I would return to work. Now someday was here. There were dozens of openings in the area, but most of them required references from recent employers. I hadn't worked in 5 years, which was going to be a problem. I would need to be creative about how I presented my caregiving experience. I also looked into temporary housing options. The hotel was expensive and I couldn't afford to stay here long term. I had some savings but not enough to be comfortable. I needed to find work quickly. As I scrolled through job listings, I felt a flutter of excitement that I hadn't experienced in years. These weren't just jobs, they were possibilities. They were chances to be useful in ways that brought me joy instead of resentment. They were opportunities to help people who would appreciate my care instead of taking it for granted. I started filling out applications, crafting my resume to highlight my skills and experience. I described my time as Brandon's caregiver in professional terms, emphasizing the medical knowledge and organizational skills I had developed. I was proud of the work I had done, even if Brandon didn't value it. By midnight, I had submitted applications to 6 different hospitals and 2 home health agencies. I had also found a furnished apartment that I could afford on a nurse's salary. It was small and basic, but it was in a safe neighborhood and available immediately. I set my phone alarm for 7 a.m. Tomorrow I would start building my new life. Tonight, I would sleep in my own bed on my own schedule for the first time in 5 years. As I drifted off to sleep, I thought about the woman I used to be. The woman who had dreams and ambitions, who laughed easily and loved deeply, who believed in herself and her ability to make a difference in the world. I had thought that woman was gone forever, buried under years of sacrifice and duty. But she wasn't gone. She was just sleeping, waiting for me to wake her up. Tomorrow, I would start the process of becoming her again. The alarm clock's shrill beeping pulled me from the deepest sleep I had experienced in months. For a moment, I lay still, disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. Then I remembered I was free. No morning medications to dispense. No breakfast to prepare according to specific dietary requirements. No schedule to follow except my own. The relief was so intense it brought tears to my eyes. I had 13 missed calls from Brandon, but I deleted them without listening. I wasn't ready to hear his voice yet, and I might never be ready. Some bridges were meant to be burned completely. After a quick shower, I drove to the apartment complex I had researched the night before. The building was older but well-maintained, with a small garden in the courtyard and parking spaces that weren't too far from the entrance. The apartment itself was tiny, just a studio with a kitchenette and a bathroom, but it had large windows that let in plenty of natural light. "It's perfect," I told the leasing agent, a kind-looking woman in her 50s who reminded me of my aunt. "Are you sure? It's quite small. Most people want to see a few options before deciding." "I'm sure. I don't need much space. I just need it to be mine." She smiled like she understood something I hadn't said out loud. Independence is a beautiful thing, isn't it? I signed the lease and paid the deposit, using money from the savings account I had managed to maintain despite our tight finances. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get me started. While I waited for my background check to clear, I drove to the nearest shopping center and bought basic supplies: sheets, towels, cleaning products, and enough groceries to last a few days. Everything I purchased was chosen by me for me without considering anyone else's preferences or needs. It was liberating in a way I hadn't expected. At the grocery store, I found myself standing in the cereal aisle for 10 minutes just staring at the options. For 5 years, I had bought the same healthy, high-fiber cereal that Brandon preferred. Now I could choose anything I wanted. I put 3 different boxes in my cart, including one with chocolate chips that I hadn't eaten since I was a child. My phone rang while I was loading groceries into my car. I expected it to be Brandon, but the caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. "Hello, is this Olivia Patterson?" "Yes, this is she. This is Jennifer from Memorial Hospital. I'm calling about your application for the ICU position. Would you be available for an interview tomorrow morning?" My heart jumped. "Yes, absolutely. What time? Would 9 o'clock work for you?" "Perfect. I'll be there." After hanging up, I sat in my car for a moment, hardly believing what had just happened. I had an interview. A real job interview for a position that would let me use my skills and education again. I spent the rest of the day preparing. I found a professional outfit buried in my suitcase, a navy blue pantsuit that was a little loose from the weight I had lost from stress, but still presentable. I researched the hospital online, reading about their mission and values, their recent achievements, and their current challenges. I also practiced answering questions about my employment gap. I had decided to be honest about why I had left nursing, but to frame it in terms of the skills I had gained rather than the sacrifice I had made. That evening, I sat in my hotel room with a cup of tea and my laptop, video calling my sister Rachel for the first time in months. She answered on the second ring, her face immediately filling with concern. "Olivia, I've been worried about you. You look different." "I left Brandon." Rachel's mouth fell open. What? Are you okay?" "I'm more than okay. I'm free." I told her everything: the phone call, the decision to leave, the job interview. Rachel listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from shock to understanding to pride. "I'm so proud of you," she said when I finished. "I've been wanting to say something for years, but I didn't know how to tell you that you were disappearing." "What do you mean?" "You used to be so vibrant, so full of life. Every time I saw you, you seemed smaller somehow, like you were fading away. I tried to talk to you about it a few times, but you always insisted you were fine." I thought about the woman I had seen in the mirror yesterday, with her hollow eyes and tired expression. I wasn't fine. I was drowning. "But you're swimming now." "I'm trying to. I'm scared, Rachel. I haven't been on my own in so long. I don't know if I remember how to be independent." "You do remember. It's like riding a bike. It might feel shaky at first, but it comes back to you." We talked for another hour, catching up on all the things I had missed while I was buried in my role as Brandon's caregiver. Rachel had gotten a promotion at work, her oldest son had made the honor roll, and she was planning a vacation to Europe with her husband. Listening to her talk about her normal, balanced life made me realize how much I had given up. I had missed birthdays, holidays, and family gatherings because Brandon needed me. I had lost touch with friends because I never had time to maintain relationships. I had become so focused on one person's needs that I had forgotten there was a whole world of people who cared about me. "I want to be part of the family again," I said before we hung up. "You never stopped being part of the family, Olivia. You just stopped being part of your own life." After the call, I went to bed early, setting my alarm for 6 a.m. so I would have plenty of time to prepare for the interview. As I lay in the darkness, I thought about the woman I wanted to become. I wanted to be someone who helped people because she chose to, not because she was obligated to. I wanted to be someone who had friendships and hobbies and interests outside of work. I wanted to be someone who could laugh without feeling guilty, who could pursue her dreams without asking permission. I wanted to be myself again. For the first time in 5 years, I fell asleep excited about tomorrow. The interview went better than I had dared to hope. Jennifer, the ICU nurse manager, was impressed by my experience and my ability to handle high-stress situations. She had worked with caregivers before and understood the complex medical knowledge I had developed. Your experience managing medications, coordinating care, and handling emergencies is exactly what we need, she said. The fact that you did it independently for 5 years shows incredible responsibility and skill. She offered me the position on the spot, a full-time ICU position with benefits and a salary that would allow me to be completely independent. I accepted immediately, agreeing to start the following Monday. I moved into my apartment that afternoon, carrying my 2 suitcases and a box of personal items I had retrieved from the hotel. The space felt enormous after the cramped hotel room, and I spent the evening arranging my few belongings and making plans for how I would decorate once I had a steady income. I had been in my new home for 3 days when Brandon found me. I was unpacking my nursing textbooks when I heard the knock on my door. Something about the rhythm of it, insistent but not aggressive, made me pause. I looked through the peephole and saw him sitting in his wheelchair, looking smaller and more vulnerable than I remembered. My first instinct was to pretend I wasn't home, but I knew he would keep coming back. This conversation was inevitable. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. How did you find me? I hired a private investigator. I had to know you were safe. I'm safe. You can go now. Please, Olivia. Can we talk? Just for a few minutes? I looked at him closely. He had lost weight and his clothes were wrinkled like he hadn't been taking care of himself. Part of me felt the familiar urge to help him, to ask if he was eating properly and taking his medications on time. But I pushed that feeling down. His well-being was no longer my responsibility. 5 minutes, I said, stepping aside to let him in. He wheeled himself into my small apartment, looking around with an expression I couldn't read. This is nice, he said. Small but nice. It's enough for me. I got a job, he said suddenly. Working from home, doing consulting for construction companies. The pay is good and I can make my own schedule. That's great, Brandon. I'm proud of you for taking that step. He looked surprised by my response. I did it because I realized you were right. I was too dependent on you. I should have been taking care of myself better. You should have been taking care of both of us better. He was quiet for a moment. I know I said some terrible things. I know I took you for granted. But I love you, Olivia. I don't want to lose you. You already lost me. The question is whether you lost me when you stopped seeing me as your wife, or when I finally stopped accepting being treated as your servant. I never saw you as my servant. Yes, you did. You called me your free servant. You laughed about it. His face flushed. I was angry and frustrated. I said things I didn't mean to someone who wouldn't understand our situation. What situation, Brandon? The situation where I gave up my career, my friends, my family, my dreams, my health, and my happiness to take care of you? And you repaid me by treating me like hired help? I was scared, he said quietly. I was scared of being alone, of not being able to take care of myself. I was scared you would leave me because I wasn't the man you married anymore. So you made sure I couldn't leave by making me feel guilty and responsible for your well-being. I never meant to do that. But you did do it. Intent doesn't matter as much as impact, Brandon. The impact was that I lost myself trying to save you. He was crying now and I felt that familiar pull to comfort him. But I stayed where I was, across the room, maintaining the distance I needed to think clearly. I've changed, he said. I'm getting counseling. I'm learning to do things for myself. I hired a cleaning service and a meal delivery service. I'm trying to become the man you deserve to have. That's wonderful and I hope it works out for you. But it doesn't change what happened between us. Can't we try again? Can't we start over? I thought about it seriously for a moment. Could we start over? Could I forget the years of being taken for granted, the phone call that shattered my illusions, the way he had made me feel like I was nothing more than a convenience? No, I said finally. We can't start over because I'm not the same person anymore. The woman who would have taken care of you no matter how you treated her is gone. I'm not going to sacrifice myself for anyone ever again. I'm not asking you to sacrifice yourself. I'm asking you to be my partner. You don't know how to have a partner, Brandon. You only know how to have a caregiver. Even now, you're not asking me what I want or what would make me happy. You're just asking me to come back and fulfill a role in your life. What do you want? He asked. I want to be with someone who sees me as essential, not just useful. I want to be with someone who contributes to my happiness instead of just taking from it. I want to be with someone who would never, ever laugh about how convenient I am. I could be that person. Maybe you could. But I'll never be able to trust that you are. Every time you asked me to do something for you, I would wonder if you were asking because you needed help or because you saw me as your servant. Every time you told me you loved me, I would wonder if you meant it or if you were just trying to keep me around to take care of you. He was quiet for a long time, absorbing what I had said. So this is really over? This was over the moment you stopped seeing me as your wife and started seeing me as your employee? I just finally got the courage to quit. I'm sorry, he said, and for the first time he sounded like he meant it. I'm sorry for taking you for granted. I'm sorry for not appreciating what you were doing for me. I'm sorry for making you feel worthless when you were the most valuable person in my life. I accept your apology, Brandon. But acceptance doesn't mean I'm coming back. He nodded, looking defeated but also somehow relieved. What happens now? Now you learn to live your life and I learn to live mine. We both become the people we're supposed to be. Will you ever forgive me? I already have. That's why I can let you go. He looked around my apartment one more time, then wheeled himself toward the door. I hope you find happiness, Olivia. I hope you find someone who deserves you. I hope you find peace, Brandon. After he left, I sat in my empty apartment and cried. Not for the end of my marriage, but for the years I had lost and the woman I had almost become permanently. I cried for the dreams I had given up and the person I had nearly forgotten how to be. But when the tears stopped, I felt lighter than I had in years. The last tie to my old life had been severed. I was completely free to become whoever I wanted to be. I looked around my small apartment, my space, my choice, my beginning, and smiled. Tomorrow I would start my new job. Tomorrow I would begin building a life based on my own needs and desires. Tomorrow I would start living for myself. The ICU at Memorial Hospital was controlled chaos. Monitors beeped constantly, families whispered in corners, and staff moved with the quick efficiency of people who understood that every second mattered. I had forgotten how much I loved this environment. The sense of purpose, the feeling of being part of something bigger than myself. My first week back was overwhelming. It had been 5 years since I had worked in a hospital setting, and the technology had advanced significantly. Electronic health records, new medication protocols, updated equipment. Everything felt familiar yet foreign at the same time. But my instincts were still sharp. When Mr. Rodriguez in bed 7 started showing signs of respiratory distress, I caught it before the monitors did. When Mrs. Chen's daughter needed someone to explain the difference between a feeding tube and a breathing tube, I sat with her for 20 minutes, answering every question with patience and clarity. "You're a natural," said Patricia, the senior nurse who had been assigned to Orient, Maine. "I can tell you've been caring for people for a long time." "It feels good to be back," I said, and I meant it. This was different from caring for Brandon. Here, people appreciated my skills. They thanked me for my kindness. They saw me as a professional, not just as someone who was obligated to help them. After my shift, I would go home to my small apartment and make dinner for one. I bought fresh flowers for my table, hung pictures on my walls, and played music as loud as I wanted. These simple pleasures felt revolutionary after years of tiptoeing around someone else's needs and preferences. I also started rebuilding my social life. I had lunch with Rachel and her family, reconnected with old friends from nursing school, and even joined a book club that met at the library near my apartment. For the first time in years, I had conversations that weren't about medical conditions or care plans. 2 months into my new job, I met Gabriel. He was a physical therapist who worked with ICU patients, helping them regain mobility and strength after extended bed rest. I first noticed him working with Mrs. Patterson, a stroke patient who had been struggling with depression and refusing to participate in her recovery. "Come on, Mrs. Patterson," Gabriel said, his voice gentle but encouraging. "I know it's hard, but your granddaughter is counting on you to get better so you can teach her to make your famous apple pie." Mrs. Patterson, who had been unresponsive to every other staff member, actually smiled. "That child burns water," she said. "She's going to need a lot of help." "Then we'd better get you strong enough to help her," Gabriel replied. I watched him work with her for the next hour, never losing patience, never showing frustration, always finding new ways to motivate and encourage her. He treated her like a person, not just a patient, and she responded by working harder than she had since her admission. "That was amazing," I said to him later, when we happened to be at the nurse's station at the same time. He looked up from his chart, and I noticed he had kind brown eyes and a smile that reached them. "Mrs. Patterson? She's tougher than she thinks. She just needed someone to remind her what she's fighting for." "Not everyone has that gift," I said. "The ability to see what motivates people, I mean." I think you do too, he said. I've been watching you with your patients. You have a way of making them feel heard. The compliment surprised me. I had been so focused on relearning my job that I hadn't thought about how I appeared to others. Thank you. That means a lot. I'm Gabriel, by the way. Gabriel Santos. Olivia Patterson. Nice to meet you, Olivia Patterson. Our conversation was interrupted by an alarm from one of my patients, but as I hurried away, I found myself smiling. It had been a long time since someone had noticed something positive about me, and it felt wonderful. Over the next few weeks, Gabriel and I developed a professional friendship. We worked well together, coordinating care for patients who needed both medical intervention and physical therapy. He was knowledgeable, respectful, and genuinely caring. Everything I had forgotten was possible in a colleague. You're different from the other nurses, he said one day during our lunch break. Different how? I asked, suddenly self-conscious. You listen like you really hear what people are saying. And you don't just go through the motions. You actually care about the whole person, not just their medical condition. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? It's what we're supposed to do, but not everyone does it. You do it naturally. I thought about his words as I walked home that evening. For 5 years, I had been told that my caring nature was a weakness, something that made me easy to take advantage of. But Gabriel saw it as a strength, something that made me good at my job. Maybe the problem hadn't been that I cared too much. Maybe the problem had been that I had been caring for someone who didn't value or reciprocate that care. 3 months after starting at Memorial, I felt confident enough in my routine to start thinking about other aspects of my life. I enrolled in a continuing education course to update my skills, joined a gym near my apartment, and even started considering dating again. The thought of dating terrified me. I had been with Brandon for 8 years, married to him for 6. I didn't know how to be with someone new, how to trust someone new, how to be vulnerable with someone new. But I was lonely. Not the desperate loneliness I had felt in my marriage, when I was surrounded by someone who didn't really see me, but a hopeful loneliness. The kind that made me want to share my new life with someone who would appreciate it. I started slowly. I accepted invitations to go out with groups of coworkers. I joined my neighbors for a barbecue in the courtyard. I said yes when Rachel invited me to a dinner party where she promised to introduce me to some very nice single people. At Rachel's party, I met Tom, a divorced accountant who was kind and stable and perfectly pleasant. We talked for an hour about books and movies, and he asked for my number. I gave it to him and we went out for coffee the following weekend. The date was fine. Tom was polite, interesting, and clearly attracted to me. But I felt nothing. No spark, no excitement, no desire to see him again. I realized I wasn't ready for dating yet, and I told him so honestly. I'm not in a good place for a relationship right now, I said. I'm still figuring out who I am outside of my marriage. I understand, he said. If you change your mind, you have my number. I appreciated his grace in accepting my rejection, but I also realized something important. I didn't want to date just to avoid being alone. I wanted to date because I met someone who made me want to share my life with them. A few days later, I was having a particularly difficult shift. We had lost a patient, a young father who had been fighting cancer for months. His family was devastated, and I had spent most of my break time sitting with his widow while she made the terrible phone calls that needed to be made. I was emotionally drained by the end of my shift, and I must have looked it because Gabriel approached me as I was getting ready to leave. Rough day? He asked. The worst. We lost Mr. Williams. I heard. I'm sorry. I know you were close to that family. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without crying. Do you want to get coffee? He asked. Sometimes it helps to talk to someone who understands. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw genuine concern in his eyes. Not the kind of concern that came from obligation or duty, but the kind that came from actually caring about my well-being. I'd like that, I said. We went to a small cafe near the hospital, and I found myself telling him about Mr. Williams, about how hard it was to watch people suffer, about how sometimes I questioned whether I was strong enough for this job. You are strong enough, Gabriel said. But being strong doesn't mean you don't feel things. It means you feel them and keep going anyway. How do you do it? I asked. How do you stay positive when you see so much pain? I focus on the people who get better. Like Mrs. Patterson. She went home yesterday and called to tell me she made apple pie with her granddaughter. That's what makes it worth it. We talked for 2 hours, and I realized this was the first time in years that I had had a conversation like this. Not about medical schedules or treatment plans, but about life, about feelings, about the things that mattered beyond the immediate necessities. Thank you, I said as we prepared to leave. I needed this. Anytime, he said. I mean that. As I walked home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time. The possibility of connection with someone who saw me as more than just a caregiver. Someone who valued my thoughts and feelings, who wanted to understand me as a person. It was a dangerous feeling because it made me want things I had convinced myself I didn't need. But it was also a hopeful feeling because it reminded me that I was capable of more than just surviving. I was capable of thriving. The next few weeks passed in a blur of routine and small revelations. I was settling into my new life, finding rhythms that felt natural and sustainable. Work was challenging but rewarding, my apartment was becoming a home, and I was slowly remembering what it felt like to live for myself. Gabriel and I had fallen into a pattern of having coffee after difficult shifts. It wasn't romantic, at least I didn't think it was, but it was companionship. Someone who understood the weight of caring for people who were suffering, someone who could listen without trying to fix everything. "You're different than when you first started," Gabriel said one evening as we sat in our usual booth at the cafe. "Different how?" "More relaxed. More present. When you first arrived, you seemed like you were always bracing for something bad to happen." I thought about that. I think I spent so many years walking on eggshells, trying to anticipate problems before they happened. It's hard to break that habit. "What was your marriage like?" he asked gently. "You don't have to answer if you don't want to." I had told him the basic facts, that I had been married, that I had left, that I had spent years as a caregiver. But I had never told him about the phone call, about feeling like a servant, about the way I had lost myself in trying to save someone else. "It was like drowning in slow motion," I said finally. "I kept thinking that if I just tried harder, if I just gave more, if I just loved him enough, everything would be okay. But it was never enough because the problem wasn't that I wasn't doing enough. The problem was that he didn't see me as a person worth appreciating." Gabriel was quiet for a moment. "That must have been incredibly lonely." It was. The loneliness of being with someone who doesn't really see you is worse than the loneliness of being alone. "What made you finally leave?" I told him about the phone call, about hearing myself described as a free servant, about the moment when I realized I had become someone I didn't recognize. "I'm glad you left," Gabriel said when I finished. "Not because I'm glad your marriage ended, but because I'm glad you chose yourself." It was the hardest thing I've ever done. The hardest things usually are the most important. I looked at him across the table, this man who had become such an important part of my new life without me even realizing it. "What about you? Have you ever been married?" "Once. It ended about 3 years ago." "What happened?" "We wanted different things. She wanted me to be someone I wasn't, and I wanted her to be someone she wasn't. We spent 2 years trying to change each other instead of accepting each other." "Do you regret it? The marriage?" "No. The divorce?" "No. But I regret the time we wasted trying to force something that wasn't working." "Are you dating anyone now?" The question slipped out before I could stop it, and I immediately felt embarrassed. "I'm sorry. That's not my business." "It's okay," Gabriel said, smiling. "And no, I'm not dating anyone. I've been focused on work and trying to figure out what I actually want in a relationship." "What do you want?" "Partnership. Someone who sees me as I am and likes what she sees. Someone who has her own life and interests but wants to share them with me. Someone who understands that love isn't about fixing each other." I felt a flutter of something in my chest. Hope, maybe, or recognition. "That sounds nice. What about you? Are you ready to date again?" "I don't know. I went out with someone a few weeks ago, but I felt nothing. I think I'm still figuring out who I am as a single person." "That's smart. You shouldn't try to be in a relationship until you're comfortable being alone." "Are you comfortable being alone?" "I am now. It took a while, but I like my own company. I like my apartment, my routines, my freedom to make choices without having to consider someone else's needs first." "But you still want to share your life with someone eventually?" "I do. But I want to share it, not sacrifice it." The distinction hit me like a revelation. In my marriage, I had sacrificed my life for Brandon's. I had given up my identity, my dreams, my autonomy. I had thought that was what love required. But Gabriel was talking about something different. Sharing a life meant two whole people choosing to be together, not one person disappearing into the other's needs. "I've never had that," I said. "A relationship where both people remain themselves." "You could have it," Gabriel said. "You deserve to have it." The way he said it made me look at him more carefully. There was something in his voice, in his expression, that suggested he wasn't just speaking hypothetically. "Gabriel," I said carefully, "are we still talking about relationships in general?" He smiled, and I saw something vulnerable in his eyes. "Maybe not entirely." My heart started beating faster. What are you saying? I'm saying that I've come to care about you very much. I'm saying that I look forward to seeing you at work, that I think about you when I'm not with you, that I admire your strength and your kindness and your courage. You do. I do. And I'm saying that if you ever decide you're ready to explore what it might be like to be with someone who sees you as a partner, not a caregiver, I'd like to be considered for the position. I stared at him, hardly believing what I was hearing. You want to date me? I want to get to know you better. I want to take you to dinner and learn about your dreams and your fears and your favorite movies. I want to hold your hand and make you laugh and be someone you can count on. But what if I'm not ready? What if I'm too damaged from my marriage to be good at relationships? Then we'll figure it out together. At your pace, on your terms. What if I mess it up? Then we'll figure that out too. I felt tears forming in my eyes, but they weren't sad tears. They were tears of possibility, of hope, of the sudden recognition that maybe I could have something I had never even known I wanted. I'm scared, I admitted. I know. That's okay. I'm scared too. What are you scared of? I'm scared of hurting you. I'm scared of not being enough. I'm scared of wanting this so much that I mess it up. The honesty in his voice made me feel less alone with my fears. When would we start? Whenever you're ready. Tomorrow, next week, next month. I'm not going anywhere. I looked at this man who had become so important to me, who had seen me at my most vulnerable and still wanted to know me better. He wasn't asking me to take care of him or to sacrifice myself for his happiness. He was asking me to explore the possibility of mutual happiness. I'd like that, I said quietly. I'd like to try. Yeah. But we have to go slow. I need to learn how to be with someone who actually values me. We'll go as slow as you need. I'm not in a hurry. And I might panic and run away. Then I'll wait for you to come back if you want to come back. And I don't know how to be in a healthy relationship. Neither do I. We'll learn together. I reached across the table and took his hand. It was warm and strong and steady, and holding it felt like coming home to a place I had never been before. Okay, I said. Let's try. Okay, he said, smiling. Let's try. Our first official date was to a small Italian restaurant that Gabriel had been wanting to try. I spent an hour getting ready, changing outfits 3 times and second-guessing every choice. I hadn't been on a real date in almost a decade, and I felt like a teenager preparing for prom. You look beautiful, Gabriel said when he picked me up, and the way he said it made me believe him. I'm nervous, I admitted as we walked to his car. Me too. That's normal, right? I hope so. The restaurant was cozy and intimate, with soft lighting and quiet music. We talked about everything and nothing, our childhoods, our favorite books, our dreams for the future. It was easy and comfortable, like talking to a friend, except for the occasional moment when our hands would brush across the table and I would feel electricity shoot through my entire body. Can I ask you something? Gabriel said over dessert. Of course. What made you decide to try this? With me, I mean. I thought about it. You see me, I said finally. Not as a nurse, not as a caregiver, not as someone who exists to serve other people's needs. You see me as a person who has value just because I exist. You do have value just because you exist. I know that intellectually, but I haven't felt it in a long time. You make me feel it. You make me feel seen too, Gabriel said. You listen when I talk, you remember things I've told you, you care about my thoughts and feelings. You make me feel like I matter. You do matter. I know. But it's nice to feel it. After dinner, we walked through the park near my apartment, talking and laughing under the streetlights. When we reached my door, I felt the familiar panic of not knowing what was expected of me. I had a wonderful time, Gabriel said. Me too. Can I take you out again? I'd like that. He leaned in and kissed me softly, briefly, and I felt something inside me flutter back to life. It was different from the desperate passion I had felt in my youth, or the obligatory affection I had shown Brandon. This was gentle and hopeful and full of possibility. Good night, Olivia. Good night, Gabriel. I went to bed that night with a smile on my face and a lightness in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. We started seeing each other regularly, always at my pace, always with my comfort in mind. Gabriel never pushed for more than I was ready to give, never made me feel guilty for needing space, never treated my healing process as an inconvenience. I need to tell you something, I said one evening as we sat on my couch watching a movie. What's that? I don't know how to be in a healthy relationship. I only know how to be a caregiver or how to be taken care of. I don't know how to be an equal partner. What does being an equal partner look like to you? I don't know. That's the problem. Gabriel paused the movie and turned to face me. Let's figure it out together. What do you need from me? I need you to tell me when you're upset instead of expecting me to guess. I need you to take care of your own emotional needs instead of making me responsible for your happiness. I need you to have your own friends and interests so I don't feel like I'm your whole world. Okay, those are all reasonable needs. What else? I need you to let me take care of myself. I need you to believe me when I say I'm fine, and I need you to trust that I'll ask for help when I need it. I can do that. What do you think I need from you? I thought about it. I think you need me to be honest about my feelings instead of trying to protect you from them. You need me to have my own opinions and preferences instead of just agreeing with whatever you want. And you need me to trust you instead of assuming you're going to hurt me. That's a good start. We can build from there. What if I mess it up? Then we'll talk about it and figure out how to do better next time. What if you mess it up? Then you'll tell me and I'll apologize and figure out how to do better next time. It's really that simple? It's that simple and that complicated. But mostly, it's about choosing to be honest with each other and choosing to work through problems instead of running away from them. I leaned against him, feeling safe and supported in a way I hadn't experienced before. I think I'm falling in love with you, I said quietly. I think I'm falling in love with you too, he said. That's scary. Terrifying. But also wonderful. What if we hurt each other? We probably will, sometimes. But we'll also heal each other and help each other and make each other better. That's what love is supposed to do. I thought about his words as we finished the movie. Love wasn't supposed to diminish you or require you to sacrifice your identity. It was supposed to help you become the best version of yourself. With Gabriel, I felt like I was becoming someone I had never been before. Someone who was valued, someone who was seen, someone who was loved not for what she could do but for who she was. 3 months into our relationship, I told Gabriel about the worst parts of my marriage. I told him about the isolation, the loss of identity, the way I had become a shadow of myself. I told him about the fear that I would never be able to trust someone again, never be able to believe that someone could love me without using me. I'm not him, Gabriel said simply. I don't want a servant. I don't want someone who disappears into my needs. I want you, the real you with your own thoughts and feelings and dreams. What if the real me is too much? What if I'm too independent now, too focused on my own needs? Then we'll find a balance. But I'd rather be with someone who's too independent than someone who's lost herself trying to please me. I don't want to lose myself again. I don't want you to lose yourself either. I fell in love with the woman who chose to save herself, not the woman who almost disappeared trying to save someone else. His words gave me the courage to be more honest about my needs and boundaries. I told him when I needed space, when I needed reassurance, when I needed to talk through my fears. He listened without judgment and adjusted his behavior accordingly. In return, I learned to listen to his needs too. I learned to comfort him when he had bad days at work, to celebrate his successes, to be present for his struggles without trying to fix everything for him. We were learning to be partners, not caregiver and patient. We were learning to support each other without sacrificing ourselves. For the first time in my adult life, I was in a relationship where I felt like I was growing rather than shrinking, where I felt valued rather than used, where I felt loved rather than needed. It was everything I had never known I wanted. 6 months into our relationship, Gabriel and I had settled into a rhythm that felt natural and sustainable. We spent several evenings a week together, but we also maintained our own interests and friendships. We supported each other's careers without losing ourselves in them. We were building something solid and healthy brick by brick. I have something to tell you, I said one evening as we cooked dinner together in my apartment. What's that? Gabriel asked, looking up from the vegetables he was chopping. I love you. Not falling in love, not think I love you. I love you. He set down his knife and turned to face me fully. I love you too. Completely and absolutely. I never thought I'd be able to say that to someone again. I never thought I'd be able to trust someone enough to be that vulnerable. What changed? You never made me feel like loving you was a burden. You never made me feel like I had to earn your love or prove I was worthy of it. You just loved me back. That's how it's supposed to work. I know that now. But I didn't know it then. Gabriel pulled me into his arms, and I felt the warmth and safety I had come to associate with him. I want to ask you something, he said. What? How would you feel about moving in together? My immediate reaction was panic. Living together meant sharing space, coordinating schedules, compromising on daily decisions. It meant giving up some of the independence I had fought so hard to reclaim. But then I looked at Gabriel's face and saw not expectation but hope. He wasn't asking me to give up my independence. He was asking me to share it. I'm scared, I admitted. What are you scared of? I'm scared of falling back into old patterns. I'm scared of becoming a caretaker again. I'm scared of losing myself in someone else's needs. I don't want you to take care of me. I want us to take care of each other. What would it look like? Us living together? It would look like two people who love each other sharing a life. We'd split the household tasks, we'd make decisions together, we'd support each other's goals and dreams. And if I need space? Then you take space. We could set up a room that's just yours, a place where you can go when you need to be alone. And if you need space? Then I take space too. Living together doesn't mean being joined at the hip. I thought about it for several days. The idea of sharing a home with someone felt both wonderful and terrifying. But Gabriel had never given me a reason not to trust him, and I was tired of letting fear dictate my decisions. Yes, I said the following weekend. I'd like to try living together. Really? Really? But we do it slowly and we do it on equal terms. Of course. We spent the next month looking for a place that would be ours, not his or mine. We found a small house with 2 bedrooms, a garden, and enough space for both of us to have our own areas. I turned one bedroom into a reading room and office, while Gabriel used the garage as a workshop for his woodworking hobby. Moving in together was an adjustment, but it was a good adjustment. We learned each other's rhythms and preferences, we negotiated household responsibilities, and we discovered that we were compatible in ways we hadn't expected. I like waking up next to you, Gabriel said one morning as we lay in bed, watching the sunrise through our bedroom window. I like it too. I like knowing you're here but not needing you to be here. That's a good way to put it. I used to think that loving someone meant needing them desperately. Now I think it means wanting them freely. I want you freely, Gabriel said, kissing my forehead. Every day I choose you. And I choose you. Living together also meant that Gabriel witnessed my healing process up close. He saw me wake up from nightmares about my marriage, saw me panic when he did something kind without being asked, saw me struggle with accepting help even when I needed it. I'm broken, I said one evening after a particularly difficult day when I had snapped at him for trying to help me carry groceries. You're not broken, Gabriel said calmly. You're healing. There's a difference. I don't know how to let people help me without feeling like I owe them something. You don't owe me anything for helping you with groceries. I helped you because I love you and because carrying heavy things is easier with 2 people. But what if I can't get better? What if I never learn how to be normal in a relationship? Then we'll figure out how to make our relationship work with your version of normal. I didn't fall in love with the idea of who you might become. I fell in love with who you are right now. His patience and consistency slowly helped me learn to trust again. Not just trust him, but trust myself. Trust that I could be loved without being used. Trust that I could be vulnerable without being taken advantage of. Trust that I could be myself without being rejected. A year after moving in together, Gabriel proposed. Not with grand gestures or public declarations, but quietly, over breakfast on a Sunday morning. I want to marry you, he said, looking at me over his coffee cup. You do. I do. I want to make promises to you in front of our friends and family. I want to legally bind my life to yours. I want to call you my wife. I thought about the last time someone had called me wife, about how that word had come to mean servant and caregiver and invisible woman. But when Gabriel said it, it sounded different. It sounded like partner and equal and beloved. I want to marry you too, I said. Really? Really? But I want it to be different from my first marriage. I want us to write our own vows, to make promises that reflect who we actually are, not who we think we're supposed to be. What kind of promises do you want to make? I want to promise to love you without losing myself. I want to promise to support you without sacrificing my own dreams. I want to promise to be your partner, not your caregiver. I want to promise to see you as a whole person, not just as someone who meets my needs. I want to promise to encourage your independence, not just your devotion to me. I want to promise to grow with you, not just to serve you. I want to promise to build a life with you, not just to fit into yours. We planned a small wedding with close friends and family. Rachel was my maid of honor, and she cried when she saw me in my dress. You look radiant, she said. You look like yourself again. I feel like myself again. Better than myself, actually. I feel like the person I was always meant to be. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. We exchanged the vows we had written together, promises of partnership and growth and mutual support. When Gabriel kissed me as his wife, I felt not the weight of obligation but the lightness of choice. We were choosing each other freely and completely as equals. 2 years into our marriage, Gabriel and I had built a life that felt both stable and full of possibility. We had learned to navigate the challenges of daily life together, to support each other's dreams, and to maintain our individual identities while building something shared. "I have some news," I said one evening as we sat in our garden watching the sunset. Gabriel looked up from the book he was reading. "What kind of news?" "I'm pregnant." He stared at me for a moment, then broke into the biggest smile I had ever seen. "Are you serious?" "I'm serious. I took 3 tests to be sure." He jumped up and pulled me into his arms, spinning me around until I was dizzy and laughing. "We're going to have a baby." "We're going to have a baby," I agreed. "How do you feel about it?" I thought about the question. Scared, excited, grateful. Ready? Ready? I'm ready to be a mother. I'm ready to create a family with you. I'm ready to love someone the way I should have been loved. You were loved. Maybe not always in the right ways, but you were loved. I know. But I want to love our child better than I was loved. I want to raise them to know their worth, to expect to be treated with respect, to never accept less than they deserve. We'll do that together. I want to keep working, I said. I don't want to give up my career to be a full-time mother. Of course. We'll figure out childcare and schedules and everything else. I don't want you to give up anything that makes you happy. What if I'm not good at being a mother? You'll be an amazing mother. You're caring and patient and strong. You've learned how to take care of people without losing yourself in the process. What if I make the same mistakes my mother made? You won't. You're not your mother, and our child won't be you. Every family gets to start fresh. Gabriel was right. We were creating something new, something that would be based on the lessons we had learned and the love we had built. The pregnancy was smooth, and Gabriel was the perfect partner throughout. He came to every appointment, read every book about pregnancy and childbirth, and never made me feel like I was going through it alone. "I love watching you become a mother," he said one evening as we sat assembling the crib. "I love watching you become a father. You're going to be so good at it." I hope so. I want to be the kind of father who sees his children as individuals, not as extensions of himself. You will be. You see me as an individual, and you'll see them that way too. Our daughter was born on a warm spring morning, after 12 hours of labor that Gabriel coached me through with patience and encouragement. When the doctor placed her in my arms, I felt a love so overwhelming it took my breath away. "She's perfect," Gabriel whispered, tears streaming down his face. "She's ours," I said, hardly believing it. We named her Hope, because she represented everything we had built together and everything we believed was possible. Being a mother was challenging in ways I hadn't expected, but it was also joyful in ways I hadn't imagined. Hope was a good baby, but she was still a baby, which meant sleepless nights and constant feedings and the exhaustion that comes with caring for someone who depends on you completely. But it was different from caring for Brandon. Hope needed me, but she didn't take me for granted. She couldn't express gratitude yet, but she showed her love in smiles and coos and the way she relaxed when I held her. And Gabriel was a true partner, sharing the nighttime feedings and diaper changes and the endless cycle of caring for our daughter. "I never want her to feel like she has to earn love," I said one evening as we watched Hope sleep in her crib. "She won't. She'll grow up knowing she's loved just for being herself. I want her to be strong and independent. She will be. She has you as a role model. I want her to expect to be treated with respect. She will. She'll see how we treat each other. I want her to know she's worth more than what she can do for other people. She'll know. We'll make sure of it." When Hope was 6 months old, I returned to work part-time. We had found excellent childcare, and Gabriel had adjusted his schedule so that one of us was always available for her. "I missed this," I said to Gabriel after my first day back at the hospital. "Missed what?" "Having an identity outside of being a mother. I love Hope more than anything, but I also love being a nurse. I love having both. You don't have to choose. You can be both." "I know. That's what makes this so different from my first marriage. I don't have to choose between being a good mother and being a whole person. You never had to choose. You just married someone who made you think you did." Life settled into a new rhythm. Work, family, marriage, friendship, all the pieces of a full life balanced in a way that felt sustainable and joyful. Hope was walking by her first birthday, talking in sentences by 18 months, and showing a personality that was both sweet and fierce. "She's going to be a force," Gabriel said one evening as we watched her stack blocks with intense concentration. "Good. The world needs more women who know their own power. She'll know hers. She has you to show her." I thought about that as I watched our daughter play. She would grow up in a house where both parents worked, where both parents shared household responsibilities, where both parents had their own interests and dreams. She would see a marriage built on mutual respect and support, not obligation and sacrifice. "Mama," Hope said, running over to me with her favorite book. "Read story?" "Of course, sweetheart," I said, pulling her into my lap. As I read to her, I thought about all the stories I would tell her as she grew up. Not just fairy tales, but real stories about the importance of knowing your worth, about the difference between love and need, about the courage it takes to choose yourself when everyone else wants you to disappear. I would tell her about the woman I used to be, the one who almost lost herself trying to save someone else. And I would tell her about the woman I became, the one who learned that the most important person to save was herself. "I love you, Mama," Hope said, snuggling closer. "I love you too, baby. Always and forever." "Always and forever," she repeated, already learning that love should be constant and unconditional. That night, after Hope was asleep, Gabriel and I sat on our back porch, sharing a quiet moment together. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Leaving your first marriage?" "Never. Not for a single moment. That decision gave me everything I have now, my career, my self-respect, my ability to love freely, you, Hope, this life we've built. I'm glad you were brave enough to leave. I'm glad I was brave enough to try again. With you. We're good together," Gabriel said, taking my hand. "We are. We're really good together." As we sat there in comfortable silence, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. 5 years ago, I had been a woman who had lost herself so completely that she had become invisible even to herself. Now I was a woman who knew her worth, who had built a life based on her own choices, who had learned to love without losing herself. Hope began to cry from her room and Gabriel started to get up. "I'll get her," I said. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. But thank you for offering." I went to Hope's room and found her standing in her crib, reaching for me. I picked her up and held her close, feeling the weight of her trust and love. "It's okay, baby," I whispered. "Mama's here." As I rocked her back to sleep, I made a silent promise to her and to myself. I would never again become so small that I disappeared. I would never again sacrifice my identity for someone else's comfort. I would never again accept being treated as less than I was worth. I would be the woman my daughter needed me to be, strong, independent, and secure in her own value. I would be the example she needed to see of what love should look like. And I would never forget that the most important love story of my life was the one where I learned to love myself enough to demand better. 3 years had passed since I had left Brandon, and my life had transformed in ways I could never have imagined. I was a successful ICU nurse, a devoted wife, and a loving mother. I had built a life based on my own choices, surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, not what I could do for them. I rarely thought about Brandon anymore. The anger had faded into indifference, and the pain had been replaced by gratitude for the lesson he had taught me about my own worth. I had heard through mutual acquaintances that he had eventually hired professional caregivers and had learned to do more things independently, but I felt no need to know the details. Then Rachel called. "Olivia, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice serious. "What's wrong?" "It's about Brandon. He's been trying to reach you." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "He called me yesterday. He's been calling everyone we know, trying to get your contact information. He says he needs to talk to you urgently." "Did you give him my number?" "Of course not. But he seemed desperate, Olivia. He said it was about his health." I felt a familiar flutter of anxiety, the old instinct to worry about his well-being. But I pushed it down. His health was no longer my concern. "I don't want to talk to him," I said firmly. "I told him that. But he asked me to ask you to at least consider it. He said he's dying." The words hit me like a physical blow. Dying? He didn't give me details, but he said he had maybe 6 months. He said he needed to make amends. I hung up the phone and sat in my kitchen, staring at the wall. Gabriel found me there 20 minutes later, holding Hope on my lap while she played with her toys. "What's wrong?" he asked, sitting down beside me. I told him about Rachel's call, about Brandon's attempt to contact me, about the claim that he was dying. "How do you feel about it?" Gabriel asked. "I don't know." Confused. Angry that he's trying to pull me back into his life. Guilty that I don't care more. "You don't owe him anything, Olivia. Not your time, not your attention, not your forgiveness. But what if he really is dying? What if he needs closure? That's his need, not yours. You don't have to sacrifice your peace to give him closure. But what if I regret not talking to him? Then you'll deal with that regret when it comes. But you might also regret letting him back into your life, even for a conversation." Gabriel was right, but the old patterns of guilt and obligation were hard to break. I had spent so many years being responsible for Brandon's emotional well-being that part of me still felt like I owed him something. I think I need to see him, I said finally. Just once. To close this chapter completely. Are you sure? I'm sure. But I want you to come with me. Of course. Gabriel arranged for his mother to watch Hope, and we drove to Brandon's house the following weekend. The neighborhood looked the same, but I felt like a completely different person walking up to the door I had once called home. Brandon answered the door himself, and I was shocked by how much he had changed. He was thin and pale, with dark circles under his eyes and a frailty that spoke of serious illness. But his eyes were clearer than I remembered, more present. "Olivia," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "Thank you for coming." "This is my husband, Gabriel," I said, not moving from Gabriel's side. "Nice to meet you," Brandon said, extending his hand. Gabriel shook it politely but remained protective. "Can we sit down?" Brandon asked. "I have some things I need to say." We sat in the living room where I had spent so many years of my life. It looked different now, cleaner, more organized, like he had learned to take care of himself in his space. "I'm glad you came," Brandon said. "I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't." "What do you want, Brandon?" "I want to apologize. Really apologize, not just ask for forgiveness. I want to tell you that I understand now what I did to you, and I want you to know that I'm sorry." "Okay. I'm listening." "I was selfish and cruel. I took advantage of your kindness and your sense of duty. I made you feel like you owed me your entire life because of my accident, and that was wrong. Yes, it was wrong. I made you feel guilty for having needs of your own. I made you feel like wanting anything for yourself was a betrayal of our marriage vows. You did. I treated you like an employee, not a wife. I took your love for granted and used it to manipulate you into staying even when I was making you miserable. Why are you telling me this now? Because I'm dying and I wanted you to know that I understand what I lost. I wanted you to know that the problem was never you. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I destroyed it because I was too scared and too selfish to appreciate what I had." "Are you really dying?" "Kidney failure. Complications from the accident and years of poor self-care. I've been on dialysis for 6 months, but I'm not a candidate for a transplant." I felt a stab of sadness, but not the overwhelming grief I might have expected. Brandon was dying, but he was no longer my responsibility. I could feel sorry for him without feeling obligated to save him. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. "I don't wish suffering on you. I know you don't. You're too kind for that. I'm not as kind as you think. I'm much stronger than I used to be. I can see that. You look happy. I'm happy. Very happy. Good. That's what I wanted to tell you. I'm glad you left me. I'm glad you found someone who treats you the way you deserve to be treated." I looked at Gabriel, who was watching the exchange with careful attention but no jealousy or insecurity. He trusted me to handle this situation, and he was there to support me, not to control me. "Gabriel is a good man," I said. "He sees me as a partner, not a servant. As it should be. I'm sorry I never learned how to do that. You could have learned. You chose not to." "You're right. I chose not to. I chose to keep you small so I could feel bigger." "Why?" "Because I was afraid. I was afraid that if you became too independent, you would leave me. So I made you dependent on me needing you, and I made myself dependent on you serving me. It was toxic for both of us." "It was. I want you to know that I learned, eventually. After you left, I had to learn to take care of myself. I got counseling, I hired help when I needed it, I even dated someone for a while." "You dated?" "Her name was Patricia. She was a nurse like you. But she was different from you. She wouldn't put up with my selfishness. She taught me what a healthy relationship looked like." "What happened to her?" "She's still around. She comes by sometimes, helps me with medical stuff. But she made it clear from the beginning that she wasn't going to be my caregiver. She would be my girlfriend, but I had to take care of myself." "That's good. I'm glad you learned that. I'm glad you taught me that by leaving. If you hadn't left, I never would have learned to be a better person." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our shared history hanging between us. "I have a daughter," I said finally. "Her name is Hope. That's a beautiful name. She's beautiful. And she's going to grow up knowing her worth, knowing that she deserves to be treated with respect and kindness. I'm glad. I hope she never meets a man like I was." "She won't. I'll make sure of it." "I know you will. You're a good mother, I'm sure." "I am. I'm a good mother, a good wife, and a good nurse. I'm all the things I always was, but now I know my value. I always knew your value. I just didn't treat you like I did. That's the same thing, Brandon. How you treat someone is how you value them. You're right. I'm sorry. I accept your apology. And I forgive you not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to be free from anger. Thank you. But I want you to understand something. I'm not the same woman who left you 3 years ago. I'm not the woman who would have sacrificed everything to take care of you. I'm not the woman who would have come back to you out of guilt or obligation. I know. I wouldn't want you to come back. You're where you belong now. I am. Can I ask you something? What? Are you happy? Really, truly happy? I thought about my life. My work that fulfilled me, my husband who cherished me, my daughter who brought me joy, my friends who supported me, my family who loved me. I'm happier than I ever thought possible, I said. I'm living the life I was meant to live. Good. That's all I wanted to know. Gabriel and I left shortly after that. As we drove away from the house that had once been my prison, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't expected. How do you feel? Gabriel asked. Free. Completely free. I thought I was free when I left him, but I was still carrying anger and resentment. Now I feel truly free. I'm proud of you. For what? For handling that with such grace. For being strong enough to face him without losing yourself again. I couldn't lose myself again even if I wanted to. I know who I am now. Who are you? I'm a woman who knows her worth. I'm a woman who chooses love over obligation, partnership over servitude, growth over stagnation. I'm a woman who saves herself first so she can genuinely help others. I love that woman. I love her too. For the first time in my life, I really love who I am. 6 months later, Rachel called to tell me that Brandon had died peacefully in his sleep. I felt sad for the loss of life, but I also felt grateful that he had found some peace before the end. I didn't attend the funeral, but I sent flowers with a note that said simply, "May you find the peace you couldn't find in life." That evening, I sat in my garden with hope on my lap, watching Gabriel work in his workshop. My daughter was chattering about her day at preschool, and I listened with full attention, grateful for every moment of this life I had built. "Mama," Hope said, "why are you crying?" I hadn't realized I was crying. Happy tears, baby. Sometimes people cry when they're very happy. Are you very happy? I'm very, very happy. Me too, Mama. Me too. As the sun set over our garden, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. I had lost myself completely, but I had also found myself completely. I had learned that the most important love story of my life was the one where I learned to love myself enough to demand better. And I had learned that sometimes, the greatest act of love is knowing when to walk away. I was exactly where I belonged, with people who saw me, valued me, and loved me for who I was. I was home.